Chapter 1. Throbbing intense pain. Li Hao attempted to open his eyes, but found it extremely difficult. Finally, a crack of light slowly opened up before him. The dim glow revealed the towering ancient halls, solemn and majestic. With a rugged dark golden dragon-scaled carpet spread out before his eyes, at the top of the steps at the end of the carpet sat an awe-inspiring giant, whose gaze was as piercing as torchlight in the dark night, with a kind of mesmerizing brilliance. "Where's this? Wasn't I just playing a game? Oh, my phone battery died and I was just about to charge it." Li Hao's mind was somewhat sluggish, hazy, observing his surroundings in a daze. Damn, I didn't fall asleep holding my phone again, did I? But this doesn't seem like a dream. 19 years old, champion of the armies, he beheaded enemies at the royal court, annihilated great demons, and quelled a century of chaos in Sangzhou. Such a hero is not only the sorrow of the Li family but also the pain of the countless subjects of the great Yu dynasty. Marquis of Xingwu, step forward to receive the decree. A commanding voice boomed from the great hall, deafening. Li Hao struggled to look up and saw many figures in official robes standing solemnly on both sides of the carpet. Was this the imperial palace? The great Yu dynasty? There seems to be no such dynasty in history, right? As Li Hao was confused, a towering giant suddenly stepped out beside him, straight as a spear. Seeing only his silhouette, one could almost smell a lingering scent of ominous bloodshed. "Today, we confer upon the 9th son of the Li family, Li Junyi, the title of first-class Xingua Marquis. He is to be promoted to Great General, given a burial in the imperial tomb, awarded 10 carts of ancient treasures, 3 Yu dragon orders, and 10 dough of gold. As of this day, the entire nation shall mourn for 3 days, and the court will abstain from meat for 7 days as we pay tribute to the valiant soul of the Xingua Marquis." Such lavish rewards astounded everyone in the great hall, only 19 years old and already anointed a marquis and a general. While ordinary marquis were conferred titles like Marquis of the North or Marquis Pingyuan, the title of Xingua to denote a marquis was an honor of eternal renown. Unprecedented and perhaps unrepeatable for future generations. After all, to be ennobled as a first-class marquis at 19 was incredibly prestigious. "Your Majesty, on behalf of my 9th brother, I receive the decree and thank Emperor Yu." The towering figure, straight as a mountain, a lance, knelt on one knee, and though his deep voice lacked much joy or excitement, it carried a faint sorrow, hoarse with strain. "This is what your Li family deserves. It is I who owe you. Marquis of Xingwu, that is your child there, isn't it? I wish to bestow a name upon him. Are you willing? Without any merit, I dare not accept such a royal favor. The young men of the Li family are all heroes of great Yu. As the Xingua Marquis laid down his life for the country beyond its borders and your son was born to this world, it may be the cycle of heavens. Will heaven has taken away my beloved general and bestowed upon great Yu another fine young man. I now confer upon him the name, Hao. I hope he will uphold the aspirations of the Xingua Marquis to purge the world for great Yu and unify Dongwang. Your Majesty, this name is too noble. This subject fears it's too great an honor to bear. No worry, the sons of the Li family are worthy of such honor." "A single name, Hao?" Li Hao was taken aback, then almost laughed. What a coincidence, it happened to be the same as his own name. Wait a second, the child they were talking about couldn't be me, could it? Li Hao looked down and was instantly stunned. There he was in swaddling clothes, his little hands and feet adorably chubby, being cradled by a beautiful woman in military armor. "Bring forth the dragon blood jade pendant for Hao heir," commanded a voice. Soon, Li Hao watched as a pale-faced eunuch with a solemn expression approached, carrying a dark red jade pendant etched with dragon motifs. A delicate, fair hand gently took it, and the beautiful woman holding him whispered softly, "Thank you, Emperor Yu, for your generous gift." What is going on? Li Hao blinked his eyes. Is this a dream? Suddenly, waves of dizziness washed over him and he could hold on no longer and fell asleep. Qingzhou City, the Divine General Mansion. The Li family, the great Yu dynasty, had 5 divine generals and the Li family was one of them. With 9 generals from a single family, all loyal and courageous, the Li family was the nobility among nobles in the great Yu dynasty, bathed in endless glory and wealth, but beneath this boundless prosperity were the lives and blood of kin. 6 of the 9 sons of the Li family had perished. The youngest marquis had joined the military for only 2 years and had just been promoted to colonel when unexpectedly, during the Battle of Sangzhou, as a mere colonel, he led tens of thousands of cavalrymen straight to the enemy's royal city. He broke through 15 cities and slew 100 demons. With achievements worthy of 10 generations, he became the 6th member of the Li family to die a heroic death in service to the nation. Now immortalized in the Temple of Valor, he was revered and remembered by all at this time. About 3 months had passed since the conferment of the Zhengguo Marquis. Over this period, the people of the Li mansion had gradually emerged from their grief with a little less gloom on their faces, and today there was a happy event at the mansion which brought rare liveliness to the place. Elite families and high-ranking officials from various states either came personally or sent representatives to Qizhou. A procession of luxurious and noble carriages parked in front of the Li family's divine general mansion, drawing countless passers-by to stop and look. Today was the 100-day celebration for the 7th young master of the Li family, the son of Marquis of Xingwu. Li Hao, this favored child of heaven, born with a gold spoon in his mouth, had been granted a name by Emperor Yu upon birth, a name known throughout the land, and as he was from a family of divine generals, there was no doubt that he would have a place in the world's future. As the saying goes, it's best to curry favor early. Within the divine general mansion, in a room of the mountain and river courtyard, Li Hao cuddled in the arms of his mother, Ji Qingqing, curiously observing the hustle and bustle outside the courtyard. In a matter of months, Li Hao had come to understand that he was not dreaming but had transmigrated. This was not a historical dynasty but the ephemeral realm. There were martial artists, great demons, as well as swordsmen and temples. Fortunately, the Great Yu dynasty was powerful. Demons were forbidden, and those daring to infiltrate the country were few, so the people lived rather well-off lives, not to mention someone born into a top-tier family like himself. The days ahead were full of hope. However, actually, your mother didn't wish for you to be born into the Li family. Did you know that? Outside, the noise was lively and boisterous, but Ji Qingqing in the room wore a worried expression and suddenly said in a low, mournful voice. Li Hao looked up at his mother in surprise. At this moment, his vocal cords were not fully developed and he couldn't speak. Even if he could, he would not be able to ask why, as that might scare the young lady to death. However, although Ji Qingqing appeared quite young to him, being in her early 20s, but the meticulous care and warmth over these past months had made him somewhat dependent on this mother figure. Actually, your mother had already thought of a name for you. It was Liping, Li Liping. Mother only wishes for you to be happy and safe, to grow up healthy, unifying the world and such. That's the dream of the royal family, not the Li family's dream, and even less so of mine. Ji Qingqing murmured softly to herself. The sycophantic faces of the nobles outside did not make her feel proud or happy, but rather, she found them somewhat glaring. Emperor Yu named you in the hope that the Li family would revive after the death of your 9th brother. The name carries the expectations of the Yu royal family and also serves as both an expectation and a spur for the Li family. She said no more. This weighty expectation placed on her own child made it easy to imagine the more favors received today, the greater the pressure to be born in the future. Li Hao looked at the sorrow between the young lattice brows. At this moment, she was no longer the awe-inspiring 7th lady of the divine general mansion, nor the iron-faced female general who struck terror on the battlefield, but simply a mother. Without the ability to speak, he simply buried his head more firmly against her chest, trying to convey his reassurance through his body heat. Feeling the movement in her arms, Ji Qingqing looked down, saw her child's long eyelashes and lovely face, and her eyes softened in an instant. She held Li Hao and shook him gently, her delicate hand soothing the infant as if to comfort her own heart. No matter what, your mother will help you. Your father has already stepped into the immortal realm, and there's a chance you will inherit that power within you. Even if your talent in martial arts is mediocre in the future, with the power your father has passed on, it will be enough for you to catch up to the pace of your forefathers when they were young, and you will not fall behind your peers. No matter what happens in the future, mother will always stand behind you and will not let anyone harm you. She whispered to herself. The 100-day feast is about to begin. Why are you here? At that moment, the robust Marquis of Xingwu came over, his palm gently wrapping around Ji Qingqing's waist, and said in surprise, "What are you thinking about? Not happy?" Of course not. Ji Qingqing packed away her emotions, looked up with a smile, and didn't share her true thoughts with her husband. She knew that the men of the Li family were of a single-minded nature, taking pride in dying on the battlefield, and her own tender feelings for her children would ultimately not surpass the 1,000-year glory of the divine general mansion. Have all the sisters-in-law arrived? They have all arrived. They are just waiting for you. And how the Marquis of Xingwu glanced at Li Hao and rubbed his little head, but his rough palm was like a blade, making Li Hao roll his eyes. Can't this pig-headed father be a little more gentle? Ji Qingqing, holding Li Hao, entered another room full of ladies and madams from the various courtyards, and at once a babble of voices surged up. Oh my, Hao is so handsome, even more so than Jing when he was a child. Yes, Shuang Look at your little brother, isn't he adorable? Yo, he's staring at me with his little eyes. Apart from the ladies of the various courtyards, their children were also present. The youngest, only 1 or 2 years old, clung to the legs of the adults, their curious eyes round and shiny as they looked at Li Hao and his swaddle. The older kids, around 5 or 6 years old, appeared mature beyond their years, not mischievous at all, standing to the side, seemingly bored, yet not daring to leave rashly, showing little interest in this new little brother. "Come on, Hao, let fifth lady hold you." A beautiful woman picked up Li Hao, her face full of affection, and then exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, is Hao hungry? He just ate this morning." The beautiful woman had no doubt and, thinking Li Hao was hungry, didn't worry further. After hearing Ji Qingqing's response, she simply pinched Li Hao's little cheek gently, chuckling merrily. The other madams also crowded around to tease Li Hao, and when the timing seemed about right, they began to present their gifts one after another. Ji Qingqing hurriedly declined, but the gifts were firmly thrust into her hands. These were treasures money couldn't buy. Today at Li Hao's 100-day feast, the gifts received had filled half of the mountain and river courtyard, all of them rare and precious treasures. Among them, a bracelet made of jade-like material was placed on Li Hao's tender little wrist by the woman holding him, fifth lady, who said it had nourishing effects on the spirit. Li Hao, who had been troubled by the chattering noises, felt somewhat drowsy. However, upon wearing the bracelet, he felt strands of coolness flowing from his little hand into his body, making him feel much more spirited indeed. The sleepiness was swept away and his thoughts became sharper. He squinted his eyes, and suddenly blurry characters leapt before him compared to the muddled blurriness when he had just transmigrated. As the months passed and he grew day by day with his brain developing, these characters slowly became clearer, and now, as if a nearsighted person had put on glasses, everything became crystal clear. Chapter 2. Name: Li Hao. Age: 0 years old. Cultivation level: mortal. Mastered artistic skills, none. Skill points: 0. These clear texts turned out to be a character panel that Li Hao was very familiar with. The reason he was familiar with it was that he had seen this thing in his previous life, but not in reality. It was in a game. When he was crossing over, Li Hao happened to be bored and had casually downloaded a casual mobile game from the leading store, and this panel was the character panel in the game. However, now there was the additional attribute cultivation level, and the age and name fields also switched to his current real status, instead of that perennial online nickname, passed with the wind. As for the skill points at the end, he found them even more familiar. Unlike the mainstream adventure and card games that required intense grinding, this game's main selling point was light entertainment. There was no battle system, no combat equipment, just fancy and flashy fashion and various arts and leisure activities such as chess, fishing, painting, carving, and so on. You could even watch movies or play poker, the serious type. The only thing missing was monsters you couldn't fight. Improving different arts would accumulate skill points, and each skill point could directly enhance your artistic level, unlocking more gameplay. Unexpectedly, after crossing over, he had brought this thing with him. Wait a second, this thing wouldn't expect him to become a full-time lifestyle master-like in the game, would it? Li Hao was somewhat shocked and speechless. This was the ephemeral realm. What use was there for art? "I need to fight." Report. While Li Hao was immersed in shock at the panel, a shrill military report suddenly came from outside the courtyard. A Li family elite soldier rushed into the courtyard, quickly shattering the peaceful and joyful atmosphere within. He knelt on one knee before the Lord of Fatsi camp, urgently reporting, "My lord, Northern Yen has erupted into chaos. Prince Pingsheng has colluded with demons and slaughtered Mofing City on the border, as well as the surrounding 8 towns. Emperor Yu has issued an edict ordering you to set off immediately to quell the rebellion." The gazes of all the power brokers and the ladies of various courtyards within the courtyard were suddenly focused on the Lord of Fatsi camp. Their expressions varied. Li Hao came back to his senses, somewhat astonished. It had only been a few months, and there was already another war? The smile had faded from the Lord of Fatsi camp's face, replaced by an aura of stern killing intent. His eyes were like cold lightning as he stared at the soldier before him, then slowly stood up, seeming to sense something. He looked up at where Li Hao was, his gaze meeting his wife's. The murderous intent in the man's eyes suddenly dissipated, and he showed a look of regret. "Qingqing, please accompany Hao for his 100-day feast. I will be back as soon as I can." Ji Qingqing's face turned slightly pale as she handed over Li Hao to the fifth lady by her side. Looking at the baby in the swaddling clothes, Ji Qingqing felt an illusion, as if the child was seriously looking at her too, and there was a hint of reluctance in his eyes. She was momentarily dazed, thinking it was just an illusion after all. The child was only a few months old. How could he understand separation? Mother will be back soon, you must be good. Ji Qingqing gently stroked Li Hao's forehead, her eyes also full of reluctance, but then she resolutely walked towards the Lord of Fatsi camp. This trip is fraught with danger, I will accompany you. The Lord of Fatsi camp immediately shook his head. You stay here and take care of Hao Er, he is still young and needs you. I am a senior general in the army. The commander is in place. How can I be absent? Ji Qingqing's eyes were grave. Prince Pingcheng is crafty and cunning, has been biding his time for many years and has suddenly made a move. I'm worried there might be more to it. It's better if I accompany you. The Lord of Fatsi camp stared at her, knowing his wife's stubborn character, sighed, and no longer tried to dissuade her. All right, then please take care of Hao Er, ladies and sisters. We will be back as soon as possible. You must be careful. The lady of the house approached, her face showing concern. You can leave Hao Er to us without worry, thank you, sister-in-law. The Lord of Fatsi camp smiled briefly, then turned and called out, prepare the horses. Fatsi camp's elite soldiers, assemble and follow me. In the general's manner, actions were swift and decisive. They were accustomed to mustering for battle, and the couple quickly led a team of elite soldiers out of the mansion, rushing overnight towards the northern Yen frontier camp. That place was where the Li family had battled for many years, and they were most familiar with the terrain, demons, and opponents. It was the Li family's area of defense. It was because of this that Ji Qingqing was determined to go along. There were too many prying eyes in the courtyard, and there was something she did not publicly say. Why did Emperor Yu receive news of the rebellion in northern Yen before they did? Early winter, Qingzhou City saw its first snowfall. More than a year had passed since the 100-day feast, and Li Hao was now a year and a half old. His parents were still on the battlefield in northern Yen and had not returned. According to the secret reports from the Li family army, it seemed that the war was in a stalemate and might turn into long-term combat at this time. The 1.5-year-old Li Hao stood alone in the mountain and river courtyard, hands clasped behind his back, like a little adult, gazing at the goose-feather big snowflakes falling from the sky. He wondered how the girl who became his mother was faring in northern Yen. The house servants and maids around him were already accustomed to the young master's behavior. Although Li Hao had just turned 1 year old, the name of a prodigy had already spread within Li Mansion. Ever since he was able to make noises at half a year old, Li Hao had never wet the bed again. While other children were crying and shouting, the little master was already using simple words like eat and poo to alert the wet nurses to feed him and take care of his bodily functions. By the age of 1, while other children were just learning to walk, young Master Li Hao was already running around, pointing at words and books, asking the servants to read to him and learning to recognize characters. He didn't cry or fuss, was intelligent and sensible. That was the impression the house servants and maids had of this young master. Second lady, the young master is over here at this time. A graceful and elegant figure of nobility entered the courtyard. Seeing Li Hao standing alone in the snowy yard, the beautiful woman's eyebrows shot up, and she immediately scolded. How are you taking care of the young master? Are you not afraid of him freezing to death in this heavy snow? The surrounding house servants and maids were so frightened that they jumped, hurriedly kneeling down. The head steward among them nervously said, replying to the second lady, It was the young master himself who wanted to watch the snow. He asked us not to disturb him. The young master is still a child. Is everything he says correct? If he told you to die, would you die? The second lattice's face showed anger as she quickly walked to Li Hao's side, picked him up in her arms, and started patting away the snow that had accumulated on his head. Even if the young master wanted to watch the snow, couldn't you have held an umbrella for him? Dressed so thinly, I think you don't want to live. The group was terrified into a cold sweat, not daring to even breathe deeply. Second mother, don't blame them. It was I who told them not to come over, Li Hao said, seeing the situation and feeling helpless. Since his parents had gone to the northern Yen battlefield, he had been alternately looked after by the ladies of various courtyards. Each lady treated him extremely well. The second lady, Lu Yurong, in front of him had a gentle disposition, but she was incredibly strict with the servants. Without saying so himself, the house servants attending to him could not avoid a good scolding. Upon hearing Li Hao's clear and coherent words, a flicker of light flashed in Lu Yurong's eyes, followed by a light snort. For Hao Er's sake, I'll let you off this time. If I catch this happening again, I will let you taste what it is like to spend the late winter in a cold lake. After speaking, she turned her face and said to Li Hao with a gentle smile and laughter, Hao Er, second mother will take you to eat something tasty. You, too, why didn't you wear more? Even with Emperor Yes' gift of the dragon's blood jade, what if you get sick? Prattling on and on, her words full of concern, she carried Li Hao out of the courtyard. Li Hao was already used to it and let second mother hold him in her embrace. Soon after, Li Yurong carried Li Hao to the Shuihua courtyard. In the courtyard, a child around 4 or 5 years old was swinging a wooden sword, his form so true to life that the swordplay seemed rather skillful. This was the second lattice only child, Li Chiefeng. Despite his young age, his gaze held concentration and determination. Next to him, a burly middle-aged man was instructing, nodding frequently. Li Hao knew this was one of Li Qianfeng's 7 military tutors, specifically teaching him sword Dao. Upon seeing the second lattice arrival, the burly man hurriedly bowed respectfully, his gaze sweeping over to Li Hao in her arms, knowing that this was the Kailan child named by Emperor Yu. Perhaps after the talent is tested, he might not be inferior to his own pupil Li Qianfeng. The child practicing swordsmanship did not get distracted by his mother's arrival, continuing to focus on his training. Li Yurong didn't interrupt, giving the burly man a slight nod before carrying Li Hao to a pavilion nearby. On the pavilion table were exquisite fresh fruits and flaky pastries. Li Yurong held Li Hao, feeding him while watching her son practice swordsmanship, the light in her eyes flickering. And before long, she had become entranced, forgetting to continue feeding. This is the Li family's finest swordsmanship. Endless sea, isn't it? Li Hao opened his small eyes wide, looking on curiously. It was said that the second lattice child had his bone age measured and possessed an exceptional talent. Li Hao wondered what it would be like when his own bone age was measured in the future. In the courtyard, the 5-year-old Li Chiefeng practiced with precision and discipline. Even though he was only practicing the movements, his posture was correct, earning frequent nods of approval from the burly man, prompting him to praise the child. Yet, no joy appeared on the child's face. He remained fully focused. Again, although the burly man praised him, his teaching was extremely strict. The child began the routine all over again, his movements smooth, clearly having mastered them by heart. Li Hao watched, entranced, when suddenly a line of text popped up before his eyes. "You have learned the rudiments, would you like to record it?" "What?" Li Hao was astonished, and instinctively he chose yes. Recording successful. At that moment, a panel popped up in front of him. Name, Li Hao. Age, 1 year. Cultivation level, Mortal Sword Dao, not entered. Can add points. Skill, Endless Sea, Tide, not entered. Forbidden. Mastered. Artistic skill, Chess Tao. Chess Tao. Level 182,500. Can add points. Chess Catalog Collection, 0 skill points, 1 for more than a year. Li Hao had been trying to figure out his panel, but due to his young age and not wanting to appear too miraculously precocious, his opportunities to test things were limited. Fortunately, he had access to a chessboard in the mansion. When he was half a year old, he lay on the chessboard and played by himself. The wet nurse and maids taking care of him saw that the young master seemed to like the chessboard toy and were only too happy to have some relief. It's better than him crawling all over the place. In his explorations, Li Hao was amazed to find that by playing chess, he could, like in a game, gain chess experience and easily move up levels. In reality, to improve one's chess level was incredibly difficult. It required focus, talent, and hard work, but Li Hao himself was only an amateur in chess Tao, not even ranked. Now, just playing simple games on the chessboard, he was able to gain experience points. To go from unranked to level 1 in chess Tao, only 100 experience points were needed. From level 1 to 2 required 500 points, if it weren't for the maids occasionally checking on him, which made Li Hao cautious about not being too obvious. He would have farmed even more experience by now. There was no helping it. Although these maids knew nothing of chess Tao, they at least had some common sense. If they saw the not yet 1-year-old Li Hao arranging the chess pieces all in their correct positions, it would inevitably seem peculiar. But at this moment, apart from chess Tao, the panel had added 2 new attributes, Sword Dao and Skill, which were not there before. Especially the prompt behind Sword Dao made Li Hao both curious and excited. Could it be that Sword Dao, like chess Tao, could be directly improved through skill points? Without much thought, he chose to add points. Chapter 3. When consciousness began to float, a surge of information suddenly flooded into his mind. Li Hao clutched his head, feeling a swelling in his brain as if it were about to burst open. This caused him to show a look of pain on his face. What's wrong with you?" Li Yurong noticed something was amiss with Li Hao and was startled. She quickly showed concern. Li Hao clenched his teeth tightly. The tumultuous thoughts in his mind gradually calmed down, and Li Hao then realized that his mind was filled with many pieces of knowledge about swords. It was as if he had been practicing swordsmanship day and night for 2 or 3 years. Damn, this headache, it's just like when chess Tao leveled up. Li Hao rubbed his head. Panting heavily, he was still too young His brain was not yet fully developed, and the vast information from chess Tao and swordsmanship was a terrifying shock to his fragile brain. Without speaking, Li Hao was trying to calm himself down. Is Lin Shui sick? Li Yurong stroked Li Hao's forehead but felt no fever, and she couldn't help being puzzled. By this time, Li Hao had fully recovered. He looked at his second mother's astonished expression, pointed to his mouth, and mumbled in his baby voice, "Bit my tongue." Li Yurong was taken aback and immediately breathed a sigh of relief and rolled her eyes speechlessly. Li Hao got away with it and didn't pay her any more mind. Instead, he secretly started checking his own panel. Name, Li Hao, age 1-year-old, cultivation level, mortal swordsmanship, level 1 skills, endless sea, tied perfect, forbidden mastered arts, chess Tao, level 1, 82500, chess manual collection, 0 skill points, 0. Li Hao was somewhat shocked. The skill points at the end were gone. But his swordsmanship had really started at uninitiated and become level 1. And the skill below, endless sea, tied, had changed from uninitiated to perfect. Li Hao had heard the military teacher who taught Li Qianfeng say, every skill is divided into 3 levels: initiation, dexterity, and perfection. Initiation means being able to proficiently perform a whole set. Dexterity means that in addition to proficiency, one can also apply it flexibly, having fully understood it at one's fingertips. When facing different situations, one can counter moves spontaneously rather than mechanically repeating set moves. As for perfection, it means the skill has been completely mastered, able to be used as naturally as moving an arm, even if performed in reverse, effortlessly without any flaws exposed. Unless there are inherent flaws in the skill itself. It is said that above perfection there is an even higher realm. Such a realm could even compensate for the flaws in skills, increasing their power even further. And now, after his swordsmanship had advanced to level 1, Li Hao had reached perfection immediately with the first layer of endless sea sword technique. This would require at least a decade of hard training to achieve. The current Li Qianfeng, it was said that he had practiced endless sea for half a year and had already initiated the first layer of tide, considered a swordsmanship genius. So, what did that make him now? A monster? Seeing that his second mother wasn't paying attention to him, Li Hao's gaze returned to the courtyard. At this moment, the children in the yard were still practicing swordsmanship, but through Li Hao's eyes, it no longer appeared as impressive as before. Instead, at a glance, he could tell the others' techniques were immature and their postures stiff. If it were someone who knew how to use a sword, they would only need a light tap to knock the wooden sword out of their hands. Not bad, said the burly middle-aged man, quite satisfied with Li Qianfeng's performance. Excellent foundation and very good comprehension. In 2 more years, he should be able to reach dexterity with this first layer. You should know, Li Qianfeng is still only a child right now, his brain not yet fully developed, so this was already quite remarkable. Time passed. Li Hao watched while eating snacks fed to him by his second mother. Gradually, he began to feel a hint of fatigue and boredom. He yawned, nestled into his second mother's arms, and slowly closed his eyes. Something seemed to pass by in front of his eyes, but Li Hao had already fallen asleep. Hearing the faint breathing in her arms, Li Yurong looked down. A hint of complexity flashing in her eyes, but when she raised her head to look at her son practicing swordsmanship in the snowy yard, the complexity in her eyes vanished and her gaze returned to calm. She stood up, carrying Li Hao out of the pavilion. Back to her own rear courtyard's bedroom, she gently placed Li Hao on her own bed, tucking him in carefully. Her movements were gentle, as if she were his birth mother. Li Hao, half asleep, felt his body being laid down and became slightly more alert. He felt warmth in his chest, a slight heat emanating from there. It was the dragon blood jade pendant given by Emperor Yu, which he wore at all times. This was also the reason why he could stand in the snowy yard without feeling the slightest cold. Just as Li Hao was about to turn over and continue sleeping soundly, he suddenly heard a low voice coming from outside the room. Did you really feed that thing to the child? A voice of an unfamiliar man. It has come to this. I had no other choice. That was his second mother's voice, but it wasn't soft and affectionate, only as cold as one would be to a house servant. You saw it too. How hard my son is striving and that he is a once-in-a-century talent. The people from Mount Wuliang have already come to see, and when Qianfeng turns 6, they will take him to Mount Wuliang to cultivate. When his divine blood awakens in the future, inheriting the power passed from his father, he will certainly become famous throughout the world. I must pave the way for him. Li Hao slightly opened a sliver of his eyes, the drowsy fog in his mind filled with confusion. Who was second mother talking to? We still don't know the child's talent. This action is too reckless, the deep-voiced man sighed. Outside the door, a brief silence ensued. Then Li Yurong's voice rose, colder than before, with a hint of mockery. As parents cherish their child, they plan far ahead for them. I wouldn't have wanted to do this, but the wooden heads of the Li family are beyond help. Blame the child's father if you must. How exceptional was that Marquis of Xingwu? Others may not know, but I am well aware that he had stepped into that realm by the age of 23, which means there's a not insignificant chance that his child might also awaken the divine blood. What? The deep-voiced man responded with shock, 23 years old, and he stepped into the three immortal realms. That's right, the Li family ancestor was a founding divine general of Dayu with a powerful bloodline. Father succeeded in the ancestor's will, and he was the same, she confirmed, in the previous generation apart from Qianfeng's father. The Marquis of Xingwu was a monster, as were the third, sixth, and ninth brothers. Especially the ninth, who was even more terrifying. Fortunately, he died early and left no descendants. The third brother's wife is always by her side, and being a girl, she will marry off eventually, so it doesn't pose a problem. The sixth brother also entered the three immortal realms early, but that was after his marriage. Lu Yurong said coldly, the only one who can compete with Qian Feng is this child, otherwise, why do you think Emperor Yu bestowed his blessing on him? Even if his martial arts talent turns out to be mediocre in the future, with the awakening of the divine blood, he can contend with the top geniuses. Outside, silence fell again. The deep-voiced man sighed lightly. Since the lady has made such a decision, I shall say no more. You needn't worry. This medicine comes from Mount Wuliang. After being taken, it leaves no trace to be tracked, nor does it cause any pain. I've even coated it with sugar. It won't taste odd. Although he is still young, it won't leave any deep memories since children have too many sweets as it is. Besides, if it turns out he cannot awaken the divine blood in the future, it can't be determined that we were behind any interference. Anyone in the divine general mansion could be a suspect. Moreover, the bloodline of that realm isn't guaranteed to awaken 100% of the time. Maybe the child simply didn't have it in him? At this, Lu Yurong chuckled scornfully. Thank the Northern Yan Wars for this. Ji Qingxing, so deeply loyal to the Marquis of Xingwu, followed him to the battlefield, providing us this opportunity. Otherwise, if we waited till the child grew a few years older and they returned, martial guards would be secretly watching over him, making it difficult to act. The man did not respond but sighed softly. Before long, their footsteps gradually faded away inside the room. Li Hao is now fully awake. His mind reeling, disbelieving second mother was going to harm him? The seemingly protective and caring attitude of every day, was it all false? Li Hao was reluctant to believe it, but reality lay stark before him. Although he didn't understand what divine blood was, second mother, wishing to clear a path for her own child, perceived him as an obstacle and thus chose to destroy him. Li Hao's expression was grim, his fists clenched tightly. The tender smiles had lulled him into a false sense of security. If this was how second mother behaved, what about the others? Who else was sincere? He had been here for only a year and a half, but being cared for in turn by these ladies, Li Hao had developed some emotional attachment. Now, however, it all felt like an illusion. Was this the internal strife of an ancient noble family? He touched his body with his small hand. Besides a slight warmth in his chest, he felt nothing else, and even this warmth was from the dragon blood jade pendant. His mother had said that he had his father's strength within him, but now it was gone. Li Hao clenched his small hand tightly in the dark, vowing to exact revenge in the future. Spring turned to autumn. In the blink of an eye, Li Hao turned 3. Nowadays, he spent most of his time in the mountain and river courtyard, being careful with the food delivered by the ladies from various courtyards. He sometimes pretended to be picky and refused it, acting like a capricious child. Gradually, the house servants in the courtyard came to understand that the young master was extremely fussy about his food and drink. 3 years old. In the divine general mansion, this was a crucial age. Ordinary families start their martial arts training at 7 or 8 years old, or even in their teens. Some, already set in their physical development, could have latent talents yet might not achieve great success due to missed opportunities during the best training period because of their family circumstances. As a martial arts household, the divine general mansion had the most rigorous training methods, with children of the clan laying their foundation from a young age. Foundation establishment at 3, blood melting at 4, bone testing at 5. By 6, it was time to formally train, not a moment wasted, on the path of cultivation. Thousands strive to cross, and an early lead often means leading at every step. Cultivation aptitude was to be tested at the age of 5. If the bones were well developed and the marrow rich and solid, one could begin training after bone testing at 5i. But with the profound depth of the divine general mansion and their belief in not rushing, they prescribed formal training to begin at 6, allowing the body another year to grow and solidify for smoother future cultivation. Even someone with exceptional talents like Li Qianfeng followed this, able to train after bone testing but still only ascending Mount Wuliang at 6. Even if practicing swordsmanship daily, it was still just the basics to develop a sense of martial arts, not considered real cultivation, and for those with average talent or delayed development. They couldn't start training, even at 6, needing more years of growth, which could be at 7, 8, or 9. However, with countless precious medicines in the Divine General Mansion to enhance martial arts qualifications, the mansion's worst case still began cultivation at 8. I heard that this case was due to premature birth and prenatal injury, leading to such a result. Chapter 4. On a sunny day, the Divine General Mansion arranged for a military strongman to come to the mountain and river courtyard to help Li Hao with his foundation establishment. This was a short and stout middle-aged man with dark skin, yet he wore a flowing blue robe. His name was Lin Haixia, sounding like that of a girl. Li Hao later called him Uncle Lin. Coming back with Lin Haixia was a little girl. She was about the same age as Li Hao, just 2 months younger. It was said that she was the orphan of a comrade in arms of the Marquis of Xingwu who fought on the distant northern Yen battlefield. Before the girl's father met with misfortune, he entrusted his young daughter to the Marquis of Xingwu, and before he died, the two agreed on a betrothal when they were infants. Li Hao was speechless about this sudden betrothal. Fine, you fight your battles, and it does not matter if you never return, but such a big matter, did anyone ask for my opinion? Despite his irritation, Li Hao did not take out his accumulated resentment on this little girl, so, in the vast expanse of the mountain and river courtyard, there was now another small figure aside from Li Hao. The little girl's name was Bian Ruxue, and she had delicate and exquisite features, her skin fair and tender like a porcelain doll. When she first arrived in this strange place, the little girl was timid and shy, asking everyone she caught, "Where is my daddy? Where did my daddy go?" The little girl was looking for her daddy, but no one in the courtyard dared to answer, and some of the softer-hearted servant girls could only secretly wipe away their tears in a corner upon hearing her. The little girl lost her appetite and grew thinner by the day. Seeing that none of the house servants in the courtyard knew how to comfort a child, Li Hao was annoyed. It seemed he had been too competent himself, not training these people properly. He had no choice but to step in himself, using a mixture of intimidation and coaxing to tell the little girl, "Your daddy is hiding somewhere, and he will only come out if you behave and eat well." The little girl, with her innocent tear-filled eyes, asked, "Is Shuer not being good? Why is daddy hiding from Shuer, and where is he hiding?" "Hiding where?" Li Hao, looking at the little girl's pitiable expression, softened a bit and said a cliché line, pointing to the sky, "Your daddy is up there, on one of those stars." From that point on, every night in the courtyard had a small figure gazing up at the sky. The myriad stars and their silver glow shone down, illuminating the solitary little shape in the house. Another little figure, who lay on top of a chessboard, would order the house servants every day to fan beside the little girl, driving away mosquitoes so she wouldn't be bitten all over. Half a month flew by, and the military strongman Lin Haixia had prepared the foundation establishment elixir for both Li Hao and Bian Ruxue. Both of them underwent foundation establishment in the same year. Foundation establishment is the foundation of the martial arts. The elixir for foundation establishment, made from countless precious medicinal ingredients, immersed the body every day, soaking in a medicinal bath to forge a body suitable for martial training. As one of the top elite families of Daiyu, the Divine General Mansion had abundant resources. From Li Hao's foundation establishment onward, countless precious medicinal herbs and rare treasures were sent to the mountain and river courtyard. Inexhaustible like snowflakes, the elixir for foundation establishment was divided into 3 grades: common, rare, and supreme. The elixir used by Li Hao was naturally of the top quality, with a 1,000-year treasure as the primer, supplemented by many other precious medicinal ingredients, capable of nurturing an 8th-layer battle physique. Once one embarked on the path of cultivation, one could break through the first realm in just 2 to 3 short years. Martial arts is a crucible of money, and this top-grade foundation establishment elixir, used up daily, was costly to maintain for half a year to a year. Only top-tier elite families like the Divine General Mansion could afford to use it so freely. In the yard, 2 large medicinal tubs. Li Hao and Bian Ruxue were soaking in them separately. However, the area around the little girl's tub was screened by curtains, with female attendants looking after her. These female attendants were different from maidservants. They had some cultivation and were akin to trusted aides within the household. On Li Hao's side, Lin Haixia personally supervised him. At that moment, the dignified dark purple elixir was surging against Li Hao's body, his chin submerged in the liquid, leaving only his nose exposed for breathing. An indescribable bitter scent from the elixir filled his nose, like swallowing bitter lotus. which kept Li Hao's spirits acutely alert. Li Hao asked, "Can I drink it?" Lin Haixia replied, "It's better not to. The elixir was potent, and the intestines of children couldn't absorb it. It could actually cause harm instead. Moreover, it's for external application." Just as Li Hao was focusing his mind, a string of text suddenly appeared before his eyes. Detecting unknown substance? Analyzing analysis failed? Automatically isolated Li Hao? What's going on? Damn. Could it be the kind of situation I think it is? Li Hao was full of doubts. Next to the medicinal tub, Lin Haixia's calm face was gradually turning grim as time passed. His brow slowly furrowed into a deep Chuan character. Li Hao noticed his expression and couldn't help but feel a lurch in his heart. He asked, "Uncle Lin, is there some kind of problem?" Lin Haixia wasn't surprised by Li Hao's perceptiveness. He had realized over the days that this little young master was more precocious than his peers. Extremely intelligent, as smart as a 5- or 6-year-old child, however, he was not in the mood to talk to Li Hao right now. Suddenly, he quickly lifted the curtain to check on the situation on the other side, and soon after returned to Li Hao's side, his face looking extremely ugly. "Uncle Lin?" Lin Haixia reached his hand toward the edge of the medicinal tub, feeling closely, his gaze becoming complicated. He looked at the child in the tub, wanting to speak, but then the words stopped at his lips. "Uncle Lin, just say what you want to say." Li Hao couldn't help but say. Lin Haixia was slightly surprised and took a look at him. Although Li Hao was more precocious, he was still just a 3-year-old child. Could he actually tell that she was hesitating to speak? However, her mood was so bad at the moment that she didn't think too much about it and just said, regardless of whether Li Hao could understand, when it comes to martial arts talent, besides the bone measurement at age 5 which can directly reveal it, it is actually hinted at during foundation establishment. The faster the absorption of foundation establishment medicine, the higher the martial arts aptitude. But young master, your absorption speed is too slow. She looked at Li Hao inside the medicine tub, her eyes revealing incomprehensible doubt and pity. Then, she thought for a moment and muttered to herself, "Maybe today was just an accident, my refining mistake. I will check more carefully tomorrow." A chill went through Li Hao's heart. Was that hint just now really about the foundation establishment medicine? What do you mean by too slow absorption? It's all being blocked. There's nothing to absorb. Li Hao was speechless in his heart. Was this panel going to adhere completely to the game's settings? He had discovered this over the past year while exploring the panel. Since there was no combat system in the game, it seemed that he was also estranged from martial arts, or more accurately, estranged from practicing martial arts. If he tried to cultivate combat skills, it wouldn't give experience. Only the arts defined in the game had an experience bar. Although he could improve himself through diligent practice, in this case, it would be better to go back to pursuing art since it was more rewarding. At least experience would soar, points would be allocated, and one could create their own cultivation technique. Overnight, that would surpass decades of hard training. It's just that now, it's a pity for all these resources piled up around him. If fully used, they could at least nurture a first-rate martial artist. Speaking of which, since this extraordinary medicine that far exceeds modern elements cannot be absorbed, why was the poison before effective? Or was it not effective? Did I just fall asleep and not notice the prompt? Maybe whether or not it'll awaken the divine blood in the future will be the judgment. However, that woman had said that awakening divine blood had a chance. Not certainty, forget it. Regardless, whether harm was avoided was due to your ability. But this bill certainly cannot be written off. Don't lose heart. I'll try again tomorrow. If it really doesn't work, I'll inform Lord Ho. He will definitely come up with a solution for you. As Li Hao pondered, Lin Haixia reassured him, although she didn't know if Li Hao could understand. There's no need. Li Hao waved his hand slightly, ready to climb out of the medicine tub, since the foundation establishment medicine was being blocked by the panel. Soaking in it any longer was pointless. Don't get up yet. Let's try again. Keep soaking for a bit longer, Lin Haixia said immediately when she saw Li Hao getting out. Li Hao shook his head and said, "It's no use, you have to obey." Lin Haixia's face became stern. Taking the matter seriously, Li Hao was dumbfounded and could only say, "I'll go check on the little girl first." As he spoke, he lifted the curtain and came to the little girl's medicine tub, and immediately saw that the foundation establishment medicine that had been poured in, identical to his, was now almost clear water, turned from purple, with only wisps of faint purple liquid like mist still drifting in it. "Brother Hao?" Bien Rushue looked up at Li Hao from the medicine tub with a puzzled expression, being too young to understand discretion, simply wearing a look of incomprehension. "Uncle Lin, considering the little girl's absorption speed, how would you rate her talent?" Li Hao didn't turn around and ask Lin Haixia behind him. Lin Haixia was feeling depressed and puzzled. But when she heard this, she couldn't help but chuckle despite being the same age. This little fellow always seemed so precociously serious in front of Shuer. Her absorption speed is considered very good. Lin Haixia had already checked before, and now her eyes reflected some emotion. If the blood melting at age 4 goes smoothly, then by the time of the bone measurement at 5 with the top resources of the Divine General Mansion, her warrior physique could very well leap to the 8th layer, and maybe even the 9th layer, ranking her among the top prodigies. 9th layer? Li Hao was puzzled. Lin Haixia was patient with the young master of the household. Regardless of his understanding, since the child had asked, she, acting as a temporary teacher, ought to answer. After listening to Lin Haixia's detailed explanation, Li Hao finally understood. It turned out that foundation establishment, blood melting, and bone measurement altogether were known as 3rd, 6th, and 9th layers. Foundation establishment medicine is divided into 3 layers, blood melting into 6 layers, and bone measurement aptitude into 9 layers. A 1st to 3rd layer physique would be of ordinary aptitude and considered lower grade. A 4th to 6th layer physique would be among the elite, regarded as middle grade. A 7th layer is already termed a genius. An 8th layer can make a name across a province. A 9th layer physique is already the most top-notch martial arts constitution, belonging to the level of unrivaled geniuses. With such a top-tier constitution, breaking through realms would be as easy as eating and drinking, and they could generally reach the 4th and 5th realm. As for higher realms, apart from talent, one also needs some other elements like one's own understanding, perseverance, destiny, opportunities, etc. Li Hao turned to look at the little girl in the medicine tub, his eyes showing some astonishment. Will this little girl be a talent who will shake the world in the future? In his mind, he pictured the image of the little snotty-nosed girl standing proudly among a crowd and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lin Haixia looked at Li Hao, her eyes filled with worry. Indeed, he was a child. He seemed clever, but after all, he was only 3 years old. He still didn't understand the magnitude of what happened today. The likelihood that there was a problem with the foundation establishment medicine was remote, and this also meant he might turn out to be a martial arts invalid, unable to cultivate. In this family of warriors, especially being a son of the Li family, unable to practice, he couldn't even imagine how cruel this would be. Chapter 5. An hour passed. The medicinal concoction in Bien Rukshu's tub had completely cleared, leaving no trace of the medicinal liquid. The maids dressed her in clean, new clothes, and dried her hair standing silently beside Li Hao's tub. She did not understand the significance of all this. She just quietly waited for Li Hao to emerge. In contrast, under Lin Haixia's insistent demands, Li Hao could only obediently soak in his tub. The color of the liquid inside his tub remained a glaring purple. The female servant accompanying Bien Rushue glanced over and was dumbfounded. As another hour went by, other house servants and maids heard the news and rushed over to take a look. All of them were shocked, having been influenced year-round within the Divine General Mansion. They naturally understood what this signified. They looked at each other at this moment, each seeing in the other's eyes a sky that had fallen. The noble son of the martial marquis being unable to practice martial arts? This was the bloodline of the Li family. Such a thing was simply unbelievable, but the reality was right in front of them. The whole courtyard fell silent very quickly. A house servant snapped out of it, and in a flustered rush ran off before long mountain and river courtyard filled with a multitude of brightly colored figures. Ladies from various courtyards arrived. They gathered around the medicinal tub and, upon hearing from the servants next to them the duration of Li Hao's soak, everyone was in disbelief. Lu Yurong stood in the crowd, her heart skipping a beat. Could it be that medicine? But she had not heard of such a severe side effect from that medicine. Her chest felt panicked, but she remained composed on the surface, her expression turning to one of urgency and sorrow. Meanwhile, within the tub, Li Hao, who felt life was no longer worth living, also saw the second wife with her outstanding acting skills. From her eyes, Li Hao even detected a hint of genuine panic. Had the second wife been startled? Li Hao sneered inwardly. As the courtyard grew increasingly noisy, the chief wife wore a stern face and ordered the servants to leave, only allowing the ladies from various courtyards to stay. She instructed that this matter must not be spread and must not be leaked. Seeing that the foundation establishment elixir showed no signs of diminishing, Lin Haixia's heart went completely cold. This couldn't even be described as slow. He thought of a terrible constitution and shivered. Could it be that the Lord's Kylan child was indeed a total waste who couldn't cultivate martial arts? Without continuing any further, Lin Haixia lifted Li Hao out of the tub, seeing how Li Hao's body had become oxygen-deprived and pale. His skin wrinkled and contracted. The ladies looked on with various expressions in their eyes. They learned that Li Hao had been soaking for 6 hours, yet the Foundation Establishment elixir showed no change whatsoever, highlighting the gravity of the situation. Lu Yurong, seeing that even Li Hao's lips had turned white from the soak, was certain that this was not a ruse. Her heart tightened. She had only intended to destroy the boy's divine blood, not completely ruin him. After all, becoming a complete invalid would make the matter too suspicious. This was the powerful bloodline of the Li family, unable to cultivate? If the reason were to be investigated later, the first to snap out of it was the chief wife. She immediately instructed Lin Haixia to take good care of Hao Er, and had her own maids bring some warm and tonic medicinal soups to nourish Li Hao's weakened body. The next day, Lin Haixia prepared 2 tubs of Foundation Establishment elixir for Li Hao and Bian Rushue to soak in separately. Lin Haixia watched intently as Li Hao entered the bath. Li Hao felt somewhat helpless, knowing it was a futile effort and a waste of herbs, but he could not win against the other party and only complied. He estimated it would not be long before they gave up hope. At that moment, the same font prompt as yesterday appeared: detection of unknown substance. Analyzing analysis failed. Automatic isolation initiated. Li Hao had expected this and was not too surprised. He obediently stayed in the medicinal bath, fiddling with his toes out of sheer boredom. As time passed and the elixir stayed unchanged, the short man from the military completely lost his composure and let out a low growl. How can this be? Lin Haixia was agitated, seemingly more incredulous than Li Hao. He paced back and forth beside the tub, striking his own head. There's nothing wrong with the elixir. It can't be wrong. Could it be that the Lord's child truly cannot cultivate? This was the Li family bloodline. Li Hao didn't feel too upset. After all, he had the panel and could become stronger without relying on these elixirs. But seeing his teacher so distressed, he felt somewhat awkward and consoled him. Uncle Lin, it's okay. Don't be so sad. Hearing this, Lin Haixia's body shook. He looked at the child in the tub and suddenly felt tears welling up. The child, you don't know what fate lies ahead of you. Seeing the child's optimistic and untainted eyes, Lin Haixia felt as if his heart were being torn apart. The commander-in-chief's only son. Could this really be his future? But he could do nothing about it. In Li Hao's case, he could only think of one possibility: innate meridian obstruction. This was the classic sign of a martial arts cripple. If it had happened in an ordinary family, it would be normal, as 8 or 9 out of 10 commoners are like this, not an extraordinarily rare occurrence. But this is the Li family. The Li family that produces true dragons generation after generation. Even the least talented children of the Li family are superior compared to others, not to mention those true dragons of the Li familiarant. They all figures renowned throughout the world. And yet, this child Lin Haixia was choked with emotion, rendered speechless even on the battlefield, where he could look directly upon mountains of corpses and seas of blood without changing color. At this moment, he dared not look at the child any longer. Those clean, innocent eyes were heartbreaking. It's okay. It's okay. Seeing that the man was genuinely sorrowful for him and was not pretending, Li Hao felt a warmth in his heart. He stood up from the medicinal bath, pulling at the man's trouser leg, trying to offer some comfort. The second Foundation Establishment elixir was declared a failure. The news spread throughout the Divine General Mansion like a hurricane. With this, the news of Li Hao's inability to cultivate was solidified. The madams and house servants of the various Li family courtyards were all shaken and incredulous. In the following days, Li Hao no longer soaked in the medicinal baths. Instead, people came one after another to examine his body, but all left shaking their heads. Li Hao also took the opportunity to overhear them, learning that in their eyes, his condition was one of a martial arts disabled body. This physique did not completely preclude cultivation, but it would be exceedingly difficult. Unable to absorb elixirs or external energy, one could only rely on grueling self-cultivation for a modicum of achievement. Moreover, one could only cultivate up to the second realm. To break through, one needed to connect with the energy of heaven and earth, and thus the second realm was the limit. The news apparently reached the northern Yen battlefield. Not long after, an urgent family letter was sent back over 1,000 miles. Yet the information in the family letter once again shocked the Divine General Mansion. The Grand Marshal had actually reached the 3 immortal realms. The letter stated that the lady of the house must not give up on Hao Er, no matter how arduous or difficult. She must see to it that he starts on the martial path. Even just beginning would suffice. In the future, once the divine blood awakens, he could still achieve something. Although he might no longer have the potential to become a genius, he could at least secure a centurion's position in the military. Thus, he would not fall short of the name of a Li family boy. The lady of the house was from the He family, named He Jianlan. He Jianlan, though over 60, appeared only to be in her 40s. After reading the family letter, she sighed deeply. Hao Er's fate is bitter. It's all because of that despicable woman. Nobody knew whom she referred to as that despicable woman. In the days that followed, Li Hao felt as if things had returned to normal. Foundation establishment was no longer necessary. It was said that when he turned 4, they would try the blood melting for him. As such, Li Hao, having nothing else to do, found even more time to secretly play chess, and his experience points grew quietly and rapidly. However, the news of Li Hao's martial arts disabled body somehow leaked out and spread beyond the mansion inside Qinzhou City. The tea houses and restaurants suddenly had a new topic of discussion, but most people took it as just a storyteller's fancy and didn't truly believe it. After all, he was a Li family boy, but to some enemies of the Li family in the royal court, the news immediately caught their attention. Upon sending people to carefully investigate and confirming that it was true, many within the family were both delighted and astonished. They were delighted that the Li family, glorious for 1,000 years, finally showed signs of a failing bloodline. The astonishment was due to the depths of the Grand Marshal's concealment, having achieved the 3 immortal realms long ago and only now being revealed. Fortunately, his son was disabled in martial arts. Otherwise, in the future, he would likely have become another Li Junyi. In the blink of an eye, Li Hao turned 4. After a year of sneaking around and working hard, Li Hao had successfully entered the 2nd tier of chess Tao. He also gained another artistic skill point without hesitation. Li Hao used the artistic skill point in Sword Dao. His Sword Dao was thus elevated to the 2nd tier. Compared to the 1st tier's overwhelming barrage of information, the now 4-year-old Li Hao could barely withstand it. Only feeling a slight swelling in his head with the improvement in Sword Dao, the skills on his panel changed as well. Name: Li Hao. Age: for cultivation level, Mortal Sword Dao. 2nd tier skills: Endless Sea Tide perfected. Forbidden known art: Chess Tao. Chess Tao. 2nd tier 01000 Chess Catalog Collection. 0 artistic skill points. 0. However, after advancing Chess Tao to the 2nd tier, Li Hao found that playing against himself no longer earned experience points. He needed to find someone to compete against. Chapter 6. In addition, as his swordsmanship advanced, Li Hao had perfected his Endless Sea Tide technique, progressing from perfect proficiency to flawless. Rich memories of swordsmanship made Li Hao feel as though he had been wielding a sword for decades. Flaws started to appear in the title sword skill, which he had originally mastered to the pinnacle of perfection in his eyes. These were the inherent flaws of the sword skill itself. In other words, they were the limits of what the sword move could achieve. After all, no sword technique could cover every aspect perfectly. Like an extremely perfect stick, it could be used for slashing and smashing, but it couldn't cut others. Now, the shortcomings in that sword skill Li Hao had compensated for. Through his own understanding of swordsmanship, Li Hao thought of the swordsmanship instructor from the military who taught Li Qianfeng and said that beyond the 3 realms of technique, there existed a 4th layer. Today, Li Hao had reached that 4th realm, flawless. But, although his swordsmanship had improved and the title sword skill had attained flawlessness, Li Hao had not executed it even once. He had only pushed it to the limit in his mind. Yet, Li Hao had a feeling that as long as he had a sword in his hand, he could execute it exactly as envisioned. However, he couldn't predict what kind of toll it would take on his body when the time came. His current child's body was far too fragile, and even if he were to grow up, he feared that a normal body wouldn't be able to withstand such a dazzling technique. An extremely strong physique was required. No matter how exquisite the sword technique is, if it can't be executed, it ultimately remains a moon reflected on the water. Perhaps I should find a body refinement cultivation technique. I wonder if I could include one. The Li family's martial arts secret archives were countless and varied in nature. All of these were housed in the Listening Rain Tower within the Divine General Mansion in Qinzhou City. There are 3 renowned holy places where multitudes of martial artists long to visit in their dreams. One is the Black and White Hall of Tan Palace Academy, one is the 100 Birds Garden of Rouge Pavilion, and the last is the Listening Rain Tower owned by the Li family of the Divine General Mansion. Li Hao planned to look for an opportunity to visit there, but before that, the special blood prepared for him within the mansion had already been concocted. This year, like Bien Rushue, he would undergo the blood melting with the same age group. The blood used for blood melting was still of the highest quality, a master-level potion refined from the bones of a millennium great demon. Furthermore, it was said that the martial lord of the northern Yan's frontline had, especially for his adopted father, slain a great demon with 3,000 years of cultivation and sent it back to the divine general mansion, elevating the grade of this blood-melting potion to another extreme. A great demon of 3,000 years was nearly as old as the age of the Great Yu dynasty. Beyond awe, Li Hao also had a new understanding of that man's strength. With Lin Haixia's assistance, blood melting commenced. The crimson liquid exuding an exotic fragrance covered Li Hao's body. Li Hao was tense. Before long, the familiar text appeared before his eyes again. Unknown substance detected. Beginning analysis. Analysis failed. Automatically isolated. Li Hao was completely speechless. But this time he felt some heartache. After all, this was something the man had prepared for him at great risk, and now it was wasted. Lin Haixia shared in that heartbreak. When he saw that Li Hao's body had no abnormal reactions and that he was trembling slightly more than Li Hao himself, it looked like Lin was even more excited, but everything seemed to have a trace to follow. Having experienced the failure of Foundation establishment before, this time he didn't lose his composure but silently closed his eyes for a moment, restraining his feelings of loss and sadness. Uncle Lin, did it fail? Lin Haixia gently opened his eyes, his gaze slightly weary. He looked at Li Hao's young face, inwardly bitter smiling, as despite being reborn into the golden cradle of the divine general mansion, the countless top resources prepared for Li Hao by the divine general mansion were something this boy couldn't enjoy. It was hard to tell if his fate was good or bad. Uncle Lin, do you think I can give this special blood to that little girl? Li Hao asked. Lin Haixia nodded slightly. At this point, since Li Hao was not blessed to benefit from it, the next best thing was to make it available for the little girl. That's great. Seeing that nothing was wasted, Li Hao smiled. Lin Haixia also revealed a slight smile, telling Li Hao, young master, I'll scrape it off for you, then you go rest. His smile was feigned, carrying a touch of sorrow in his eyes. Okay, Li Hao nodded, not pointing out what went unsaid. The news of Li Hao's failed blood melting quickly spread to the ears of the various ladies of the courtyards. In Shuhua courtyard, Li Yurong slightly raised her eyebrows upon hearing the quiet report from a maidservant by her side, though her face showed little joy. Just a faint shake of her head. She had secretly inquired on Mount Wuliang and knew the medicine wouldn't cause such side effects, which meant this boy was naturally defective. It was only his luck to have been born into the Li family and in Ji Qingqing's belly. Had she known earlier, she wouldn't have even needed that medicine. A defective being, even with divine blood, what could he amount to? On the contrary, it would only serve to highlight her own son Qianfeng's superiority. After all, when the time came, both were third generation of the Li family, both possessing divine blood, but one would be useless while the other a true dragon among men. Everyone knew how the old matriarch would choose. After Li Hao's blood-melting failure, the little girl's fusion was outstanding. Having absorbed the foreign blood prepared for Li Hao, Bian Ruxia's martial talent was further enhanced. In the coming days, all she needed was to be nurtured slowly, and at the age of 5, the bone measurement would reveal the specific outcomes. Li Hao, upon hearing the news, was happy for the little girl, but he himself had encountered a troublesome issue. No longer could he gain experience from chess Tao through self-play, so he had to find the maids around him to accompany him in his chess games. Though these maids didn't dare contradict their young master's daily commands, they were all hesitant and afraid to agree to this request. These servants knew Li Hao had failed his blood melting and possessed no talent for martial arts, yet now he still wanted to play chess. They were aware that the young master had been plopped before a chessboard since childhood, seemingly born with a natural talent for chess Tao, but in a military family of such standing, such talent was trivial. It was even seen as indulging in frivolities that could lead to ruin. If the ladies found out they were accompanying Li Hao in such an irresponsible activity, they wouldn't be able to guarantee that the wrath derived from Li Hao's inability to practice martial arts wouldn't be taken out on them, smart as they were. These servants in the divine general mansion dared not touch such bad luck. Thus, having no other choice, Li Hao had to find Lin Haixia. Knowing he wanted her to play chess with him, Lin Haixia was speechless, unfamiliar with such things and somewhat helpless towards the young master's optimistic ignorance. However, she did not outright refuse. Perhaps this last year before the bone measurement ceremony is this child's final period of happiness, Lin Haixia thought to herself. She agreed to Li Hao's request. And after sorting out Bien Rux's situation, she started accompanying Li Hao in his chess games. From then on, a common scene in the courtyard was the two figures, one tall, one short, playing opposite each other in the pavilion, with a little maid standing on tiptoes nearby, peering over. Now and then, the voice of the child bent over the chessboard could be heard shouting, "That's not right, you have to place it at the intersection of the lines, not inside the squares. That's not cheating, that's called capturing. This has already been surrounded and is dead, you can't place any more inside. You're so silly, I've already told you 3 times." After one game of chess, Li Hao would be exhausted, having gained just 1 point of experience. This was far more tiring than playing against himself. Whenever the opponent broke a rule, the game would be invalidated, so he had to teach while playing, explaining the rules to his opponent Lin Haixia, who had thought she was merely humoring a child, did not expect there to be so many rules and regulations, and her face showed signs of strain. After several days, Lin Haixia disappeared, leaving Li Hao stamping his little feet in frustration. Having no choice, he decided to first pay a visit to Listening Rain Tower. Listening Rain Tower stood north of Divine General Mansion, leaning against the mountain. The Divine General Mansion covered an extensive area, so vast that one could even ride a horse carriage within it. Apart from the ladies' courtyards, there were also sceneries like mountains, lakes, and gardens. Weathered through the years, Listening Rain Tower appeared to be nothing more than an old building midway up the mountain, quite unremarkable, yet in the world, countless eyes yearned to glimpse its true face. However, all those gazes dared not cross that golden wall towering above. Accompanied by the old steward Zhao from mountain and river courtyard, Li Hao arrived in front of the tower. Zhao put Li Hao down and, with a tone of earnest caution, advised, "Young master, this place is a crucial site for the Li family. Even if the ladies of the courtyards come, they must seek permission from the senior madam. Let's go back, shall we?" Aside from the direct second-generation descendants of the Li family, only 2 ladies could freely enter Listening Rain Tower, one being the senior madam. "Didn't I ask you to send someone to notify them? I just came to look around. Should be fine, right?" Li Hao said nonchalantly, hands clasped behind his back. Zhao had long grown accustomed to the young master's precociously stern demeanor, baffled about whom he might have picked it up from, replying with a pained expression, "But no reply has come yet, and the senior madam might not give her consent. Although you are entitled to enter, young master, you are still very young after all, so what if I'm young? You look down on me?" Li Hao said, keeping a straight face. "I wouldn't dare, young master." Zhao hastily replied. Li Hao, bored by the exchange, quietly surveyed the Listening Rain Tower before him. The ancient tower, aged and 7 stories high, had been the place where, after his bone measurement, Li Qianfeng reached the 9th rank war body, and that night, the woman sought permission from the senior madam to choose a martial art for her child. She found the endless sea at the top of the tower. There were a total of 4 styles with an endless sea. Each style was tremendously difficult, with rumors suggesting only the 3rd uncle had mastered the final style, almost cleaving half of Jingzhou with a single sword stroke. Chapter 7. Eternal Spring Court. He Jianlan sat dignified on the smoothly polished Nanmu armchair, listening to the young house servant's trembling report. A trace of movement stirred in her heart. She had long heard that the child was precocious and very clever, but sadly lacked martial arts talent, wasting all that intelligence thinking of the letter from the border side of the Li family. He Jianlan sighed inwardly and said indifferently, "Xuejian, keep an eye on the child. Just make sure he doesn't tear up the books." Yes, to the side. A woman with almond eyes and red lips, fair complexion, quietly answered. The directive from Eternal Spring Court was conveyed to the outside of Listening Rain Tower. Li Hao looked at the young girl who came to supervise, a bit surprised. But he did not mind, since it was quite normal for the lady of the house to not feel at ease letting him enter the tower alone given his young age. Both house servants, but Zhao's status was clearly lower than that of this girl, called Xuejian, who stopped him from entering the tower. Inside the ancient tower, the light was dim, and dust covered the floor. Rows of towering bookshelves stood in the tower, each side bearing a wooden label, categorizing them. There were books on swordsmanship, saber techniques, spear methods, as well as categories on weapons, poisons, and more. The variety of books was vast, almost anything you could think of. Li Hao couldn't help but exclaim. This small tower practically contained half of Jianghu. Before long, Li Hao found the body refinement sex secrets, the shelves densely packed with various body refinement techniques. Vajra's secret, Divine Turtle 9 Transformations, 7-star seal, and so on. Li Hao casually took down a book called Stone Skin 100 Refinements and began to leaf through it. Leaning against the bookshelf, the tower was extremely quiet, with only the breathing of the two of them. One large, one small Shuejian followed Li Hao like a shadow, proper in her behavior and even more dignified than the daughters of ordinary nobles. She watched the young master who had been the center of attention since birth, and curiosity glimmered in her eyes. He really does seem very precocious, and he even seems to be literate, and he's reading with such focus. Can he really understand it? Time passed, as Li Hao read over the initial chapters repeatedly, trying to understand every word. A joyous message finally appeared before him. You have learned the basics? Do you wish to record this? Li Hao immediately chose yes. Soon after, a panel leaped before his eyes. Name: Li Hao. Age: 4. Cultivation level: Mortal Swordsmanship. Level 2 Skill: Endless Sea Tide. Exquisite Forbidden Physical Body Path. Not started. Skill: Stone Skin 100 Refinements. Not started. Forbidden Chess Tao. Level 21811000. Chess Manual Collection. 0 skill points. 0. Seeing the successful recording, Li Hao felt pleasantly surprised. His speculation was correct, and with this, he could officially start his cultivation. But before that, he needed to accumulate new skill points. Thinking of this, Li Hao's brows furrowed in worry. Grinding experience by himself was fast, but playing against others was much slower. It took 3 days just to accumulate 18 experience points, and the scapegoat had been frightened away. He needed to find a stable scapegoat. Li Hao muttered to himself, stuffed the secret back on the shelf, and then turned to ask the young girl behind him, which floor has the best body refinement? Secrets? Shuejian was a bit surprised. Does this child truly understand body refinement? Who taught him? Could it be that military officer who helped him with foundation establishment? Martial meridians blocked, so he intends to pursue the pure body refinement path. Realization flickered in Zuejian's eyes as she replied softly. To answer the young master, listening. Rain Tower's strongest body refinement secrets are on the 6th floor. I will take you there. They're not on the 7th floor? Li Hao felt a tinge of disappointment, saying, the strongest should mean the only one, right? Because one text is complete and can be cultivated, while the other is incomplete. It can still be practiced, but not to the pinnacle, said Shuejian. Li Hao was somewhat surprised. An incomplete text made it to the 6th floor? Soon, under the little girl's guidance, Li Hao was carried up to the 6th floor by his own efforts. He had already begun to tire by the 3rd floor. The higher up they went, the fewer the secret manuals on the floors became, and by the time they reached the 6th floor, there were only a few short bookshelves left. Glancing over them, it appeared that all the secret manuals combined might total to just 20 or 30 books. However, Li Hao didn't underestimate this number. With the 1,000 years of accumulation of the Li family, these 20 or 30 books would probably be invaluable if placed outside very quickly. Shuejian brought back the 2 body refinement secret manuals she had mentioned to Li Hao. One was called Thousand Jiao's Holy Body. The other one was named Tai Chu. The covers were somewhat worn and damaged, likely to be treated as trash by ordinary households, used to prop up a wobbly table leg. Li Hao took them and started flipping through them one by one. Just the opening of the manuals made him feel a vast difference from what he had seen on the 1st floor. He couldn't understand it at all. The words within were extremely abstruse, like reading classical Chinese. Oh no, it should be said more like oracle bone inscriptions. With great difficulty he recognized a few characters, but when strung together, they were completely incomprehensible. Li Hao's little face scrunched up in frustration. He kept at it stubbornly for a while, but ultimately decided to give up decisively. He couldn't even grasp the basics. When I first watched that little brat practice swordsmanship, it also took me several days to record the Endless Sea, and that was directly observing someone demonstrating. This is self-study. Li Hao shook his head. It was better to wait until he had accumulated enough skill points to enhance his physical body path before trying again. He had Shuejian carry him downstairs. Although Li Hao wanted to learn other types of secret manuals, it was clear that he didn't have the energy to spare at the moment. Without skill points, everything else was in vain, and the problem returned to the lack of tool people. After leaving the listening rain tower, Li Hao said goodbye to the little girl, who was very precise in dealing with people, and then returned to the mountain and river courtyard with Zhao. Brother Hao. Seeing Li Hao's return, Bian Rushue immediately ran over but tripped and almost fell. Don't rush, Li Hao quickly said. Where did Brother Hao go? Can you take me with you next time? Bien Rushua pouted, her eyes filled with hope. Over the past year, the little girl had become attached to Li Hao, even taking her pillow at night and sneaking into Li Hao's room. Only with this arrangement would she willingly go to sleep. At first, Li Hao had driven her away several times, but after the little girl woke up crying several times in the middle of the night, running to find Li Hao, her tearful appearance finally made it impossible for him to harden his heart. Fortunately, the bed was big and his own body small. Having one more person did not make much difference, and as the little girl was quiet and did not fuss in her sleep, he let her be. You must be obedient. As long as you stay here, no matter where I go, I will come back, Li Hao said, patting her small head. The surrounding house servants and maids were accustomed to this scene and did not find it surprising. Pinky promise. Bien Rushue extended her small hand. Feeling helpless, Li Hao pacified her with a pinky promise. No takebacks, you said it, whoever changes is a puppy. Bien Rushue pouted slightly. All right, Li Hao said helplessly. In the following days, Li Hao was determined to showcase his chess talent and began to forcefully request the house servants and maids to play chess with him. Those who disobeyed would receive 3 strikes from Zhao. After 3 strikes, even though their skin wouldn't split, it was enough to deter them from sitting down on a chair for half a day under the tyranny of the young master. These maids and house servants had no choice but to take turns at the table to entertain him. As days went by, 2 scenes appeared in the courtyard. One was Lin Haixia teaching Bien Rushue simple swordsmanship and boxing. Suitable for the young and the small, it wasn't formal cultivation-level training, just routines for getting familiar with the feel for martial arts. Though occasionally painful, the little girl was rather stubborn and never cried over this. On the other side, things were bustling. A group of house servants gathered in the pavilion as Li Hao played against one of them, with the order that the onlookers had to study the game. Among these house servants, some were clueless about chess, while some seemed to have picked up a bit from somewhere. Li Hao found that when playing against those with chess skills, if he won, he would gain not just 1 point of experience, but 2 and occasionally even 3. On the other hand, playing against those who were ignorant of the game, even if he won, he would only get 1 point of experience. If the opponent carelessly made a wrong move, the whole game would be invalid. So, gradually, these house servants were no longer needed on rotation, and Li Hao picked out the 2 with the best chess skills to accompany him in grinding experience every day. In the blink of an eye, Li Hao was 5 years old. Chapter 8. This year, the conflict on the northern Yen border grew increasingly tense. With constant battle reports, there were problems with weaponry and military supplies, and Prince Pingcheng's collusion with the Great Demon implicated yet another force behind the scenes, making the war situation even more complex and difficult. Within the Divine General Mansion, there was much discussion and concern for the front line. It was said that the court was also in constant debate over this matter, with many proposals being put forward, but although the storm of politics blew into the mountain and river courtyard, it did not touch upon those 2 young figures. At 5 years old, Li Hao underwent the usual bone measurement. Weak bones, no special color, no special glow, no marrow condensation. The elderly Taoist measuring Li Hao's bones was from Qingqiu Mountain. With the looks of a crane-haired youth, he examined the little boy before him with doubt. If it wasn't for the presence of the Li family's lady, he might have even suspected a case of switched at bird grudge between noble families, with the young master being secretly replaced. Bone talent, inferior to inferiors. Battle physique, not of any rank, just a normal skeleton of an ordinary child. The elderly Taoist eventually concluded the bone measurement. Upon hearing this, ladies such as He Jianlan had difficult expressions, and the 5th lady couldn't help but say, "Are you sure you're not mistaken? How could he possibly have such a talent?" The other ladies remained silent. This elderly Taoist was a familiar figure in the Divine General Mansion, having measured bones for the children of various courtyards, never making mistakes. Moreover, since Li Hao's foundation establishment had failed before, and then his blood melting failed, they were all well prepared for this outcome. Now seeing this result, it was almost as expected. Li Hao quietly scanned the expressions of everyone present. That second mother of his was also there, her face even more sorrowful, perhaps even more so than the others. Yet of all these people, how many were truly upset for him, he couldn't tell. Brother Hao. Bien Rushue clutched at Li Hao's clothing, her little face full of tension. Although she did not understand what was happening, she felt that Li Hao seemed to have lost something. Li Hao looked at the pitiful expression on the little girl's face and couldn't help but grin. He pinched her tender little face. He should be the one to feel sad. After all, in 2 months' time when she had her bones measured, she would probably astound everyone. The elderly Taoist left and the crowd dispersed. It was like the receding tide. The mountain and river courtyard returned to calm with only the two small figures left. And Lin Haixia standing nearby. That night, the military officer who had refrained from drinking for many years drank alone in the courtyard. Smelling the alcohol, Li Hao also developed a craving. He found a small jade cup and, hugging the bottle, was just about to pour himself a little when Lin Haixia, who had gotten tipsy, gave him a fierce look. She snatched the bottle from his hand and scolded with rare anger, "You're incredibly bold, even daring to drink alcohol." "I'm just keeping you company," Li Hao said with a cheeky smile. "What do you know? Drinking is for adults," Lin said irritably. "Drinking alone is lonely. It's better to have company." Li Hao tried to snatch the bottle back but couldn't reach it as the military officer lifted his hand higher. Lin Haixia gave Li Hao a look, intending to reprimand him, but hearing his words she suddenly fell silent. It was then she suddenly remembered that this little guy had been alone since his parents left after the 100-day banquet. Yes, he must want company too. When Shue's father wasn't around, the little girl had cried all the way to the Divine General Mansion. Looking out at the vast mountain and river courtyard with its beautiful interior, Lin realized that even the most scenic beauty could not replace the accompaniment of parents. Lin Haixia said nothing, poured herself another 2 gulps of alcohol, then looked at Li Hao, who wore a carefree smile. Out of the blue, she remembered she had been at this place for 2 years and had never seen the little guy cry. Hey, perhaps the alcohol was getting to her, but Lin Haixia couldn't be bothered with formalities and no longer called Li Hao young master. In her eyes, he was still a little brat. "Do you miss your parents?" she asked. Li Hao was taken aback. His mind conjured up the image of the young girl holding him at the window, mumbling to herself in sorrow. 5 years had passed, and he had already forgotten the warmth of that embrace. But the sorrow in those eyes had instead been seared into his heart. "I guess I do." Li Hao gazed up at the starry night sky and said softly, "It must be hard fighting in northern Yen. I hope they're okay." Lin Haixia was stunned. She had thought the child would become sad, or had perhaps forgotten his parents, since they were not around when he was so young, and he probably had no concept of them. But not only did he remember, he harbored no grievances and was even worried about the generals. For a moment, Lin Haixia felt as if her heart had been harshly stabbed. She felt a pang of heartache. She rubbed her eyes and tipped her head back to gulp down more alcohol. "Uncle Lin, are you crying?" "Nonsense, it's just a spilled drink. What do you know?" The night wind turned cold. Haixia became drunk. The drunken Haixia began reciting war poems in the courtyard, practicing her punches and kicks, and eventually collapsed like a heap of mud. Li Hao instructed a house servant to carry her back to her room to sleep. To avoid feeding the mosquitoes, 2 months later, it was time for Bian Ruxue to have her bones measured. It was the same elderly Taoist from Qingqiu Mountain in the same courtyard, at the same spot, measuring Bian Ruxue's bones. It wasn't long before the old Taoist's eyes widened and he looked at the little girl with barely concealed excitement, laughing loudly. "Bones like gold, iron, divine jade, divine bones indeed, 7-colored dim light, bone marrow full and flowing with patterns, supreme quality, 9th layer peerless battle body. Haha, worthy of a child from the Divine General Mansion, truly not disappointing. The Chenkuan list will surely add a new name in the future." As he spoke, he glanced at Li Hao when he looked down and his smile instantly stiffened. He then coughed twice, feeling slightly embarrassed. That was close. He had almost forgotten about this record-breaking little fellow from the Divine General Mansion this time. Only He Jianlan was beside them. Other ladies from the various courtyards were not interested in Li Hao's daughter and did not come over. Hearing the old Taoist's words, both He Jianlan and Lin Haixia's faces broke into smiles. Then both of them glanced at Li Hao at the same time. Although Li Hao did not have martial arts talent, having such a wife with peerless talent, he would have support for his future. "Amazing, little girl," Li Hao said with a smile as he pinched the cheeks of the cluelessly cute Bian Ruxue, who still had a clueless expression on her face, clearly not understanding what had happened. Upon hearing Li Hao's words, Bian Ruxue did not look happy but instead pouted slightly. At this moment, the little girl only wished that the old grandfather had treated brother Hao the same way earlier. After sending off the old Taoist, Lin Haixia started to teach martial arts knowledge to Bian Ruxue in the courtyard. The little girl was already 5 years old and had started to understand things. It was time to teach her some things. A 9th layer peerless battle body, breaking through realms as easily as eating and drinking. Once she started her cultivation, it was estimated that within a year she would break through the first realm, in 3 years, break through 2 realms, in less than 10 years, reach the peak of the 3rd realm. This is the terrifying part about the 9th layer battle body. The three realms of martial arts are the Power Passage Realm, Circulation Realm, and Soul Succession Realm. Each realm has 10 layers. The fourth realm is Divine Traveling. Lin Haixia is a fourth realm strong practitioner, and he, this year, is already over 40. One should know in 10 years, Bian Ruxue would be merely 16 years old. A 16-year-old at the 10th layer of the Soul Succession Realm would be in existence as dazzling as the moon. Capable of overseeing a city as the city's guardian, a true strong practitioner, while an ordinary martial artist, being able to step into the circulation realm at 16 would already be quite an accomplishment. Enough to be accepted into a prestigious clan. With the placement of the piece, the game of chess was decided. Li Hao won, experience points 2. Li Hao yawned, glanced out the window, and saw the little girl practicing swordsmanship with Lin Haixia. Her posture awkward and adorable. He withdrew his gaze, told the house servant who had been playing chess with him to leave, and then pulled up his panel. After a year, he finally had enough experience in chess Tao. He had earned another skill point without hesitation. Li Hao chose to add the point to the physical body path. Soon, a complicated surge of information flooded in, and he frowned slightly as he endured it. After a while, he had slowly digested it all, as insights about the body refinement realm came to mind. Li Hao felt inspired, closed the window, the door, and then started practicing poses in his room. He began practicing the body refinement art, Stone Skin 100 refinements. As he assumed his pose, his body moved like a dragon in flight and a leaping tiger. And his body emitted cracking sounds. His blood, meridians, and bones all seemed to twist, and the cells in his body seemed to be activated, his whole body burning hot. With the completion of one set of Stone Skin 100 refinements, Li Hao's entire skin turned red and emitted steam, while his hair was wet with sweat, his little face covered with dense beads of sweat, feeling something special. Li Hao checked his panel and was astonished to find that his attribute in cultivation level had changed from ordinary to the Power Passage Realm, 3rd layer. Li Hao could feel an unprecedented strength filling his body, as if he could easily split rocks and crack steels. He was extremely delighted and then repeated the practice once more. This time, with abundant strength, his posture was more precise, and his skin swelled even redder, with heat wafting like smoke. After practicing the second time, Li Hao saw his cultivation level had unexpectedly risen to the 4th layer. He then continued to practice, the 3rd time, the 4th time, until after the 8th round, his cultivation level no longer increased and settled at the 7th layer of the Power Passage Realm. Chapter 9. Strength akin to that of lions and elephants roamed within his body as Li Hao slightly clenched his fist, feeling as if his small hand could effortlessly crush a large rock. Merely moments ago, he was a mere mortal, but now, in a short span of time, he had become a cultivator. The Power Passage Realm is the first realm of martial arts, focusing on strength. Strength pervading the entire body is called Power Passage. After long years, each level of the Power Passage Realm has been clearly defined, with the first level being the ability to lift a tripod, which is to say a 200 gene arm strength. Ordinary families, through common sustenance and exercise, could also barely match the first level of the Power Passage Realm, but to reach higher levels, one either needed to be born with great strength or had to enhance it through cultivation. With each advancement of a level, the strength increased by the weight of an additional tripod. 7 levels equated to 7 tripods. That is to say, Li Hao at the age of 5 could now lift an object weighing 1400 gene. And that was just the strength of his arms. The power that could burst forth from his entire body would allow him to easily leap 100 meters, move as fast as lightning, and effortlessly combat 100 ordinary robust men. I can finally cultivate. At least now I have the power to protect myself, he thought with excitement. Li Hao felt that with just a bit of effort, his entire body tensed, and the surface of his body became incredibly thick, although still tender to the touch. But if one were to pinch him, the skin wouldn't pinch up easily. It was like stretched oxhide, impossible to twist. However, this is probably just the limit of the Stone Skin 100 refinements. If I were to cultivate those 2 secret manuals, my cultivation level should increase further, Li Hao thought to himself. He took a deep breath, adjusted his Bodhi's condition, and waited for the reddish hue on his skin to gradually disappear and revert to normal. Before leaving the room next, Li Hao called for Zhao and asked him to send word to his aunt soon. His aunt's response came, still accompanied by the maidservant named Xuejin this time. He went straight to the 6th floor, picked up the 2 secret manuals, and began to leaf through them one by one. With his understanding and insights from the initial segment of the physical body path, Li Hao found many previously incomprehensible sections suddenly clear to him. Learned the basics. Would you like to record them? Yes. After consecutively recording both secret manuals into the panel in less than a moment, Li Hao had Xuejin take him downstairs. Although Xuejin felt helpless inside, she didn't show it on her face. After all, the child was just playing, so she indulged him. As for understanding the secret manuals, well, not to mention this short amount of time, even if he studied for several more days, if he could understand them, that would be something. Even the secret manuals on the first floor, which would be considered mid-tier if taken outside, required at least 3 to 5 days of contemplation to learn the basics, let alone those on the 6th floor. The more powerful they are, the more difficult naturally, with higher thresholds for cultivation. But Li Hao was unaware of the young girl's thoughts, and even if he did know, he wouldn't care. After all, who takes a child's notions seriously? Back at the mountain and river courtyard, before starting his cultivation, Li Hao had the maidservants prepare some food and drink. After cultivating Stone Skin 100 refinements, he felt a great depletion in his body. And now, in just a moment's time, he felt ravenously hungry. Is this little bit enough for anyone? Bring me another serving, one more of each item. I am still growing, don't you think I can't eat that much? Under the dumbfounded gazes of the maids, Li Hao ate an entire table's worth of meat, and after wiping his greasy little mouth, he felt only 6 parts full. But fearing to scare the servants, he did not continue. Instead, he swaggerishly returned to his room and began to cultivate. The previously obscure 1000 Jiao's holy body had 4 layers, and when he recorded it onto the panel, only the first 2 layers showed as mastered. The first layer, Jiao Fiend Body, conferred a body with bones as hard as the hardest substance and skin like dragon scales, impervious to blades and swords. The second layer, Jiao Dragon Body, contained half-dragon strength, further enhancing various aspects of his body. Li Hao took a stance, his body crouched like a fierce tiger, his spine arched like a drawn bow, and his bones made a light crackling sound with the understanding from the initial segment of the physical body path. He was opening the secret gates of his body. Every cell in his body seemed to be stimulated. His blood circulation accelerated once again. This time, Li Hao also felt a cool, subtle energy permeating from the outside world and seeping into his body. This was the power of Tai Yin from the celestial energies. As the power of Tai Yin entered his body, Li Hao's previously reddened flesh gradually returned to its normal hue, while his flesh and blood rapidly transformed. The secret gates were opened, refining himself with the forces of heaven and earth. As more and more power of Tai Yin surged in, Li Hao's skin turned pale and then a shade of blue, as if he were a corpse. Even on the surface of his skin, faint protrusions akin to dragon scales started to appear. After 3 incense sticks of time, the first layer's cultivation was complete. Li Hao glanced at his cultivation level, and to his surprise, it had risen from the 7th level of the Power Passage Realm to reach the 10th level, perfection. The first 9 levels of the Power Passage Realm were not significantly different, each with a 200 gene increase as the boundary. But the jump from the 9th to the 10th level was a threshold, where the strength would double. The 10th level signified complete power passage, strength reaching through the whole body, perfectly unified. And the strength he could lift with both hands would reach 3,600 gene. Overjoyed, Li Hao meticulously felt his physical body, and immediately a tinge of regret crossed his mind. Divine blood had not awakened. Those with the inheritance of divine blood would awaken it upon reaching Power Passage Realm perfection, at which point their strength would increase again, reaching 7,200 gene. Such a gap was sufficient for those of divine blood in the Power Passage Realm to easily sweep across peers in the same realm and even make up for differences in technique, forcefully breaking through with strength. It was like the difference between a big spender and an ordinary player in a game. It looked extremely unfair, but that was normal because divine blood inheritance required a parent to reach the 3 immortal realms. And across the 19 states of the Great Yu Dynasty, few reached such a realm. Without the enhancement of divine blood, Li Hao was not discouraged but simply adjusted himself a bit and continued to cultivate the 2nd layer of the cultivation technique. Half an hour later, he slowly finished his practice. As he opened his eyes, divine light seemed to burst forth and his pupils appeared even darker and more profound. He felt his own body. The strength was significantly greater than just before. At this moment, he even wanted to find someone to spar with to test out his exact level of power. Bringing up the panel, Li Hao was astonished to see that he hadn't made a breakthrough in realm. His cultivation level was still at the 10th level of the Power Passage Realm. His strength had clearly surged, yet it did not reach the Zhou Tian realm. Li Hao was startled for a moment before he realized that he still did not know how to channel his qi. After reaching the power passage realm perfection, a kind of energy known as qi had emerged in his body. Where there is strength, qi follows. This sensation of qi was like the feeling of power swelling in the biceps. However, the qi roamed through his body uncontrollably. Li Hao suddenly remembered that the second layer of the Thousand Jiao's holy body did not seem to mention how to channel qi either, and for the third layer, with his current understanding of the physical body path, it was beyond his ability to comprehend. With the Jiao dragon body commanding the power of the half-dragon, I wonder how much strength I possess now? Li Hao mused silently. He could feel that he was much stronger than before, at least twice as much, if not more. Li Hao was not in a hurry to test his strength but turned his attention to another body-refining skill, the incomplete primordial volume. With the insights of the physical body path bolstering him, Li Hao quickly understood much and began practicing immediately. The general outline of the incomplete primordial volume recorded that this body-refining skill has 5 realms. However, the incomplete volume in Li Hao's hands only contained the first 2 realms. The latter 3 had been lost. Just the first volume of the primordial secret technique required one to open the secret gates within the body, to feel the power of the sun and the power of Taiyin from the heavens and earth, and to achieve the simultaneous infusion of both yin and yang forces to temper the body without the aid of the physical body path. It would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for ordinary people to complete the first step, but at this moment Li Hao handled it as if it were second nature, with ease. As the yin and yang forces converged in his body, his physical form was continuously transformed by the second volume. It was about using the yin and yang forces contained within the body to draw in the power of the stars, cultivating a starry body. This was a physique more domineering than the Jiao dragon body, containing the power of both Taiyin and the sun within. With the body as the furnace core like that of a star, brimming with vigorous heat and strength, when Li Hao opened his eyes again, it was already the middle of the night. He had been practicing for 7 or 8 hours without realizing it. His eyes were retracted and calm, slowly opening, his breath deep and continuous like a coiled dragon resting. His hearing and vision had been greatly enhanced. Li Hao could even hear a faint whooshing sound within the courtyard, not of the wind, but of swords. Someone was practicing swordsmanship. With Li Hao's swordsmanship realm, he could visualize a person's sword-fighting stance and style based solely on the sound of the sword wind. It was that little girl. Was she also working so hard? A smile appeared on Li Hao's lips as he then checked his status on the panel. Name: Li Hao. Age: 5. Cultivation level: Power Passage Realm Level 10. Swordsmanship Level 2. Skill: Endless Sea-Tide Sublime Forbidden Physical Body Path Level 1. Skills: Stone Skin 100 Refinements Great Accomplishment 1000 Jiao's Holy Body Small Success of Jiao Dragon Body Primordial Starry Body Beginner Chess Tao Level 3 05000 Chess Manual Collection 0 Artistic Skill Points 0 Still at the Power Passage Realm? Li Hao was somewhat surprised. He could feel tremendous changes in his body, several times stronger than when he had just reached the 10th level, and he believed that even using the sublime level of the tidal sword skill would be effortless for him. Yet, he still had not broken through. However, up to this point, he indeed did not know how to circulate qi throughout his body. These first 2 volumes of the primordial body refining skill seemed only to be applicable within the power passage realm. Yet, the strength they brought was far beyond the power passage realm. The only problem was that cultivation was extremely difficult. Even with his current insights at level 1 of the physical body path, he was barely a beginner. Ordinary people would probably take 10 or 20 years to reach this level. By that time, they would have likely already stepped into the Zhou Tian realm. After all, compared to entering the Zhou Tian realm, this seemed even harder. Li Hao stood up and got used to his body before he opened the window and saw indeed, in the courtyard under the starlight, a small figure was practicing swordsmanship. However, to Li Hao's surprise, compared to the clumsy and awkward sword swinging in the morning, she was now wielding the sword with proper form. That little girl actually had some talent. Li Hao smiled and, with a push of his hand, flipped through the window. Landing agilely on the ground, he went to another part of the courtyard by a rockery. Zhao had mentioned that this rockery was personally carried back by his father in his youth, weighing 100 cauldrons. Crouching slightly as all the house servants and maids were resting and a few guards were patrolling elsewhere, Li Hao took advantage of the absence of others. He went to the front of the rockery, found a groove in a stone cave, and tried to push it. Gurgle. To Li Hao's amazement, when he exerted all his brute strength, he actually lifted the rockery weighing over 10 tons. As the rockery moved, the water in the nearby pond surged and backflushed beneath the rockery at the power passage realm level 10 without divine blood capable of lifting 10,000 caddies. Startled, Li Hao quickly let go, gently setting down the rockery. Chapter 10. Li Hao was wondering if he were to have his bones measured again, what the result would be, but the chance came only once, and no one thought the old Taoist from Qingqiu Mountain had made a mistake since the day of the bone measurement. He had clearly felt the bustle at the mountain and river courtyard diminish. In the past, the ladies from each courtyard would often bring their children over to play or invite him over to eat some border or tributary states' delicacies and specialty fruits. Then let their children play with Li Hao, trying to become closer from a young age, but now 2 months had passed and only the first lady, fifth lady, and that young ninth lady had come to visit him. They just saw that he was unharmed. And then they didn't come over again. However, he occasionally received fruits, pastries, and the like sent over from the eternal spring court. Now that it was winter, he had even received 2 sets of little cotton-padded trousers and jackets made of fine beast fluff, as well as a scarf. Li Hao put the scarf around the young girl's neck. The next day, at the break of dawn, Lin Haixia was already practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard with Bian Ruxue previously at the weapon rack. Lin Haixia had the child choose among various weapons, performing drills with each to gauge her affinity for them, and Bian Ruxue ultimately chose the sword, and through practice, Lin Haixia found that she indeed had a talent for swordsmanship, so she taught her earnestly. Occasionally being strict, around noon, Li Hao finally woke up leisurely. He was not yet 6 years old and didn't have to abide by the family rules of visiting the eternal spring court each morning to greet the head lady, so he could comfortably sleep in. Seeing the diligent little figure practicing in the courtyard, Li Hao shook his head slightly and murmured to himself, feeling sorry for her. Then, with the help of his personal maid, washed and had breakfast. Afterward, he routinely summoned the 2 house servants who knew how to play chess to set up the game in the pavilion. Before long, the game of chess came to an end, but Li Hao noticed he didn't receive any notification of experience points increasing, which made him pause in surprise. Then he saw the following words appear before his eyes: to advance to the 3rd segment of chess Tao, one needs a chess heart. A chess heart? Li Hao was puzzled, as if sensing his thoughts. The words gradually faded away, then another line appeared: to cultivate a chess heart, one's mind must contain only chess, only a passion for chess. Good, a straightforward explanation. Li Hao was somewhat surprised that he could actually interact with the words. Hello? The words disappeared. Li Hao tried calling out a few more times, but there was no response, so he stopped pondering about it and instead ruminated internally. A passion for chess? So he needed to refine a chess heart first before he could earn experience points? At the Divine General Mansion, Li Hao had heard of a sword heart, a spear heart, and even the phrase sharp-tongued but soft-hearted, but he had never heard of a chess heart. It made sense, after all. Playing chess and other minor pursuits were considered insignificant trifles not worthy of attention at the Divine General Mansion. However, a chess heart should be something similar to a sword heart, right? He thought back to when the ladies in the courtyard would hold him and chat idly about how a certain young man had been practicing swordsmanship every day since childhood, holding a sword even while eating, sleeping with a sword, and after refining a sword heart, progressing at a rapid pace in his swordsmanship training. So, did he need to do the same to refine a chess heart? But did Li Hao like chess Tao? In his previous life, he had only a slight understanding of chess, but it was really just a little playing chess. Who really enjoys playing chess among serious people? Playing poker is more enjoyable than playing chess after a day's hard work. Who has the energy for such a brain-draining activity? Unless it's for a change of pace or an occasional alternate form of entertainment. Even though he had a panel that could improve his chess Tao experience, Li Hao only saw it as a tool for farming skill points. Not something to truly fall in love with or become passionate about. That would be difficult. Li Hao was a bit stubborn and had the house servant play another round of chess with him. Then he became a believer. This left Li Hao somewhat troubled, his little face creasing in frustration. Just when he was starting to enjoy cultivation practice, you tell me I can't earn experience from playing chess. How can this be? Does it really mean that he should embrace the chess set every day? But without the experience, why would I bother holding it? Maybe he should switch to practicing some other art? But this chess heart, he wondered what its use was. He'd figure it out later. In the following days, Li Hao moved the chessboard to his bed, laid a blanket on it, and simply used it as a pillow during meals. He also set the chessboard beside him as if it were a statue of Buddha, but this formality seemed to have no effect. Li Hao didn't continue to play chess with the servants, instead spending his time watching the young girl practice swordsmanship or browsing through various books at Listening Rain Tower. One day, While flipping through books at Listening Rain Tower, Li Hao saw several pages of a chess manual in one of them, which made him curious. The book told stories of a famous figure from hundreds of years ago, who had been humiliated in his youth and sought revenge later on. However, his enemy had given up. Martial arts for chess. The figure had said that when the day of retribution came, he would crush his opponent completely, driving him to despair before killing him. It turned out that the opponent had been studying chess for many years already. They engaged in a chess battle right on the spot. The figure was soundly defeated, and although he was stubborn, he did not kill his enemy then and there. Instead, he executed the enemy's entire family, sparing no one, not even children, leaving only the enemy alive, vowing to return in the future. But he never managed to solve that chess game before he died. After reading this, Li Hao couldn't help but want to laugh. It seemed the enemy knew the figure very well. Although his talent for martial arts was inferior, he was clever enough to learn this skill to avoid a deadly fate. Suddenly, Li Hao felt that chess might be somewhat interesting after all. It's not surprising that the Li family, like him, in this martial world deep down felt that playing chess was merely casual entertainment, meaningless, but now this idea had changed somewhat. Chess manual Myriad detected. Would you like to include it in the collection? Text suddenly appeared before his eyes. Li Hao was surprised and then remembered that there was a feature on his panel for collecting chess manuals. It was also clear that he indeed had no interest in chess Tao. Having treated it only as a tool for gaining experience in 5 years, he had never bothered to collect any chess manuals. At this moment, he felt somewhat ashamed. Li Hao immediately chose yes. Soon, an entry named Myriad appeared in the collection section of his panel. At the same time, there was a prompt indicating that it could be embedded. Li Hao, puzzled, tried selecting the embed option. Then a line of text popped up. Please select an embed target. Physical body path? Swordsmanship? Li Hao was surprised. What did this mean? He thought about it and chose the physical body path. He had just begun cultivating and experienced the feeling of a sudden increase in strength all over his body. So he was looking forward to the physical body path even more. Embedding successful. At that moment, Li Hao suddenly felt a complex stream of information rushing towards him. This feeling was very familiar to him, and after a brief moment, it was completely assimilated. Li Hao saw behind his panel. Physical body path. Level 1. Myriad, and the patchy information in his mind told him exactly what had happened. Myriad places the target amidst the myriad elements of the world, impossible to discern, concealing all traces of one's energy. Li Hao exerted a little bit of effort, and his bodily presence immediately retracted. The surging strength and energy inside his body seemed to shrink into every pore and cell, invisible to any observer. A special attribute? Li Hao was shocked. He hadn't thought that a chess manual could have such an effect. It was simply inconceivable. With his level 2 chess Tao, he could somewhat understand this manual. It contained a grand maze within a smaller one, with traps and pitfalls at every turn. It was no wonder that the great figure had never been able to solve it in their lifetime. However, after embedding this chess manual into the physical body path, it turned out to give similar attributes. If he had chosen swordsmanship as the embedding target, would his sword techniques possess additional deceiving effects, making the true killing moves imperceptible to others? If matched with the title sword skills, exquisitely lavish sword moves, it would probably be even more dazzling to the eye. Li Hao glanced at his panel, where the option to embed Myriad chess manual had disappeared, signifying that only one choice could be made. However, this had opened a new world for him. Chess manuals were truly the way to go. If he could collect various other chess manuals, wouldn't he be able to imbue his attacks with all kinds of special buffs? Thinking of this, Li Hao's interest was piqued, and he began searching around the tower. But Listening Rain Tower, while a sacred place for martial artists, was not a sanctum for chess players. After several days of searching within the Listening Rain Tower, Li Hao only found 3 chess manuals, one of which was even used to prop up a bookshelf. Flying Phase, Hidden Bow, Tiger Press. After obtaining these 3 chess manuals, Li Hao studied them and guessed their attributes based on the characteristics of each. Embedding Flying Phase and Hidden Bow into swordsmanship, Tiger Press was embedded into the physical body path. Flying Phase doubles the attack range, gaining long-range striking effects. Hidden Bow. The killing move remains hidden until it strikes fatally in one move. Tiger Press slightly increases strength and has an intimidating effect. The 3 chess manuals brought significant improvement to Li Hao. Unfortunately, although Divine General Mansion had everything, one could possibly need. The martial artist household did not have the habit of collecting chess manuals. Li Hao returned to his courtyard and could only ask the house servants to look for chess manuals outside on his behalf. But they all made excuses, none daring to aid the young lord on a path that seemed far from the right vocation. With no other choice, Li Hao had to offer a hefty reward to entice them in the following days. Aside from waiting for chess manuals, Li Hao slowly began to ponder over the art of chess. He removed the blanket covering the chessboard at his bedside, put it back, and took away the chessboard on the dining table. Occasionally, he would walk around the courtyard or watch the young girl practice swordsmanship. Perhaps because she had lost her parents at a young age and experienced hardship, the young girl had an extremely hard-working nature. Under the guidance of Lin Haixia, her swordsmanship improved day by day. "That's not right. This move is not correct," said Lin Haixia as she was teaching swordsmanship one day, showing her strict military officer side. Even though she was very pleased with Bian Ruxu's natural talent for swordsmanship, she still severely criticized any mistakes made during practice. The young girl held back her tears and stubbornly practiced over and over again. Li Hao shook his head helplessly, thinking that even though Lin was a nice person, he might not always teach according to the learner's abilities. A few harsh words, and the young girl's sword moves were almost deformed. That night, Li Hao saw the little one still practicing in the yard and called her over. "Your posture is incorrect. Bend your arms a bit more, yes, like that. Don't be too stiff in the waist with no one around." Li Hao took the time to personally guide the young girl. Bian Ruxu was not dull. In fact, she indeed had a talent for swordsmanship. Under Li Hao's instruction, she quickly corrected her stance and began to emit the essence of swordplay. "Brother Hao, do you know swordsmanship too?" the young girl asked excitedly after practicing. "Then can we practice together tomorrow?" "Don't talk nonsense, I don't want to get up early," Li Hao said, startled and quickly responding. "If Uncle Lin finds out that you know swordsmanship, he will be very happy," Bian Ruxu said, hopeful. Although she didn't understand many things, she could see that the adults around seemed somewhat disappointed with Li Hao. The young girl was so diligent and hardworking because, deep down, she was filled with the desire to prove something. Everyone said Brother Hao was no good, but she believed Brother Hao was actually very smart. "I don't know swordsmanship, don't go spreading rumors," Li Hao quickly said, hoping the young girl wouldn't shoot herself in the foot and ruin his chance to sleep in. It would make him cry. Bian Ruxu looked puzzled. "But you clearly go to sleep." "Sleep?" Li Hao rolled his eyes and sent the young girl off, reminding her not to talk nonsensically. The next day, in the courtyard, Lin Haixia watched Bian Ruxu swing her sword, and slowly her eyes began to widen in disbelief.